Recording in progress.
Look at us go. All right, let's get this meeting started with a roll call.
Present? Hello, hello. Oh, perfect. Okay. Shelley Reed,
Here.
Alex Velto,
Here.
Harris Armstrong,
Here.
Dan Lesreski,
Here.
Marilyn Kramer,
Here.
Michael Flick,
Here.
Carl Nieberlein,
Here.
Rob Pierce.
Here, he looks for. Oh,
There you go. Ooh,
Here. Did you hear me?
yes. Yep. Thank you, Rob.
And Carrie Rohrmeyer. Here.
All right, we're all here. We're going to start with the election of officers. First, we'll start with the election of a chair.
Are you looking for nomination?
Yeah, I'm looking for a nomination.
I nominate Harris Armstrong.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of Commissioner Armstrong signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes unanimously. Next, we're moving on to election of vice chair. Can I get a motion?
Yeah, this is Rob for the record. I move that we appoint Dan Lazarecki for vice chair.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes. Congratulations. Next, we'll move on to the salute to the flag. Can you, Director Smith,
bet.
can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
My pleasure. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move on to approval of the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
We don't have a date on here. That would be the
July 25th.
July
Right up here,
25th.
July 25th. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
This is Rob. Oh, sorry.
I think Commissioner Nieberlein beat you to the punch, so we'll go with that. And so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And we'll move on to our first public comment of the evening. Do we have any public comment?
We have none for this item.
Okay, well, I will close public comment and move on to approval of the minutes. And there's a date there.
I got it. Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and motion to approve the minutes for the June 27, 2024 Regional Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Looking for a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Commissioner Rohnmeyer. Any discussion?
As Commissioner Velto, I'll abstain. I was not present at that meeting.
Okay,
Commissioner Armstrong, same comment. Thank you.
just for the record, even when you're not at a meeting, you don't have to abstain. You can still vote.
That's right.
Yeah, it's fine, though. I think we still have a quorum. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion passes. All right, we'll move on to the business of the day. Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. Our first item, item 7A, is a public hearing item, a regional plan conformance review, City of Reno Master Plan Amendment for the Valley View Estates. We have Regional Planner Chris Tolley to give us a presentation on that item.
Good evening, Commissioners. Chris Tolley, Team RPA. This item is a conformance review for the Valley View Estates Amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan, and that case number is CR 24-007. I recognize we do have some new members on the commission tonight, so I will maybe take a step through a little slower than normal, but also be fast at the same time. And we typically start our presentations with an overview of the case as well as salient regional planning perspectives or important pieces of information. So in regard to this overview, again, this is a proposed amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan, and we'll cover the details on the following slides. Regional Planning staff does recommend that the proposed amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan, and this is a conformance review, and we do look at both master plan amendments as well as projects of regional significance generally. There we go. Continuing with the overview, the location is approximately 350 feet southeast of the intersection of Claim Jumper Way and Tellurium Mine Drive, and directly east of the Truckee Meadows Water Authority, or TUMWA's reservoir tank near this project site. It is located in Tier 2, which is a regional land designation. We have the mixed-use corridor. We have Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and the rural area. Continuing with the overview. To get into the details, so this is, again, an amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan, and that is the change in land use on the subject site from unincorporated transition. And the other overall subject site, again, is 81.81 acres. Again, that's going from unincorporated transition to 18.72 acres of single-family neighborhood and 63.09 acres of parks, greenways, and open space. The proposed land use, as we'll see on the following slides, fits within the character of this area. The Reno City Council approved the proposed master plan amendment, along with an annexation of the subject site and a regulatory zone amendment to change the subject site to planned unit development for the Valley View Estates. And finally, there's one correction. The voting represented on behalf of both bodies of the City of Reno was actually 6-1. I believe one of them said 5-2. So it was 6-1 for both bodies in favor. And then here is the existing and proposed land uses. Again, this is going from unincorporated transition to single-family neighborhood and parks, greenways, and open space. The single-family neighborhood would follow the developable areas of the subject site, and the parks, greenways, and open space land use would apply to the remainder. Finally, the single-family neighborhood land use generally allows approximately 2 to 8 dwelling units per acre. However, those figures do not consider limiting factors such as slope. The planned unit development identifies that the gross density is limited to 0.65 dwelling units per acre and a maximum of 43 dwelling units. And that does set the overall development potential for the subject site. And moving on to the review criteria. So again, for projects of regional significance and master plan amendments, this is Policy RC9 sets a review criteria for consideration by the Regional Planning Commission. And we'll step through the analysis presented in the staff report on these slides. This request proposes to change the land use designation again from unincorporated transition to single-family neighborhood and parks, greenways, and open space. And that would result in a relatively small increase in allowed residential units over what is currently allowed. As noted, the subject site is located in Tier 2, which is characterized by suburban residential development at suburban levels. The proposal is consistent with the Tier 2 regional land designation. The proposal overall is also compatible with existing development patterns in this portion of the region. Again, we can look at the existing and proposed land uses. In regards to public facilities and services, the proposed amendment is not anticipated to negatively impact the 5 service domains, which are water, wastewater, flood control, stormwater drainage management, transportation, and schools. And we'll talk about those a little bit more in detail in a couple items, but those are what the Nevada Revised Statutes sets as the public facilities that we are to look at the regional level. So some additional details about this. The site will be served by the South Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility, which has capacity to serve the project. The site will be served by Tuma for water. Flood control stormwater facilities will be constructed pursuant to the City of Reno design standards, which will be appropriately determined during a development review process. Regarding transportation, the proposed road network will connect to the existing Claim Jumper Way and Tellurium Mine Drive intersection as required by the City of Reno. The proposed development will have minimal impact on schools with a very limited number of new students generated. In regards to natural resources, the Valley View Estate Plan Unit Development Handbook includes approximately 63.09 acres of open space, which is approximately 77% of the subject site. The submitted materials identify that the proposal incorporates creation of several trails and sidewalks that will connect with the existing trail system. The project proponents will also coordinate with the Truckee Meadows Trails Program regarding the existing and future trail network of multi-use trails in the surrounding areas and support of regional trail connectivity. The project is located within a wildland urban interface area, and future development will follow the requirements set forth in the Nevada Revised Statutes and the Nevada Administrative Code. Continuing with natural resources, PUD Handbook also outlines several strategies to address the feral horse population located in proximity to the subject site, including fencing and cattle guards. The PUD also requires coordination with the Nevada Department of Wildlife to determine if there are potential impacts to any critical wildlife habitat areas. If there are concerns identified, the appropriate mitigations will be identified through an NDOW-approved plan. And a review of the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan Map 4 for development constraints area, or development constraints in general, identified that the subject site does contain slopes greater than 30%, which is identified an identified development constraints area. However, these areas are located in the parks, greenways, and open space land use designation. Finally, the proposed amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan is not anticipated to impact natural resources. And finally, regional coordination. So for regional coordination, Team RPA ensures that this is at the forefront of our work. And we work with jurisdictional staff and other relevant entities during our conformance review process. And finally, regional planning staff did provide an initial review memorandum for the subject case. So again, staff is recommending that this conforms with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. The motion is presented on the screen or on page 10 of the staff report. This does conclude my presentation. However, staff and City of Reno staff are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any of the commissioners have questions for staff or for the City of Reno? No questions? Well, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to open it up for public comment. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We have none.
Okay, I will close public comment then and move on to either a discussion, motion. I don't hear anybody. Is there
Madam Chair?
anybody online that wants to ask a question? Doesn't seem so.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move to find the Valley View Estates amendment to the City of Reno Master Plan in conformance with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Okay, we have a motion. Can I get a second?
This is
Commissioner,
Rob.
go for it, Rob.
This is Rob. I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Kramer and a second by Commissioner Pierce. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to item B. Director Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Jeremy Smith for the record. Item 7B is a presentation and possible approval of the 2023 Truckee Meadows Annual Report. And we have GIS Coordinator Damian Kerwin over there at the Command Center, who's going to take us through the annual report.
That's right. Thank you, Jeremy. And as you already mentioned, Damian Kerwin, GIS Coordinator with Team RPA for the record. I'm going to take you through what we call the Truckee Meadows Annual Report. It's something that we have to do every year, and NRS requires the local government, so Washoe County, Sparks, Reno, and affected entities to send us these annual reports to the RPC and RPGB, and that's why it's here today in front of you all. And I believe this is the third or fourth rendition of us doing this TMAR now as a dashboard online, so it's a little bit more digestible and easy to look at all the information that we're bringing to bear. So I'm just going to take you through kind of the different sections of the TMAR, and of course, those reports that I mentioned are found at the end under summaries. We summarize those reports, and you can also access the full reports from each of those entities there as well. So you can also click on these, and it'll take you to each of those sections. So the first one is kind of population, and as you can see, our population has been steadily kind of increasing over the years. This number is from the state demographer here, this 508,000 number. And then as you see here, we also have population forecasted out for the next 20 years. This comes from the consensus forecast, which actually will be coming to this planning to all you at the RPC meeting in September. But first we have to take it to the Northern Nevada Water Planning Commission and Western Regional Water Commission as well. And then if it gets approved at both those bodies, it'll be here in September. And then that will become the official consensus forecast, something that we do every 2 years for existing population and population out 20 years. And then moving on, we have a breakdown of dwelling units, and you can see we break it down by each of the jurisdictions. Also those tiers that Chris had mentioned in his previous presentation. So you can see the various units that are occurring in a lot of the tiers, and of course most of it you can see is occurring in generally tier 2, but it's good to see the amount of units happening, say in 2023 in the mixed use core as well. And then we also track kind of historical units throughout the region, broken down also by jurisdiction, and you can see some different unit breakdowns by single family, multifamily by jurisdiction as well, and then we also break those down again by those tiers. And then the next section is housing, where you can see we've tracked a few housing stats, and you can see from 2020 to 2021, for example, where median home sales price jumped up significantly, and then we reached a peak in 2022. It's gone down ever so slightly in 2023, although it remains still pretty high, and you can see how average rental price for 2 bedrooms has still gone up over the years as well. You can also look at kind of median income and how that is steadily rose throughout the years. And then we also have a little graph here showing kind of the percentage of those who rent and the percentage of those who own. Also, there's some vacancy rate information here for apartments. And then this is kind of highlighting our affordable housing data tracker, and it was part of the regional strategy for housing affordability that we worked on and crafted some policies in it. The data behind this has not yet been updated. We're waiting on some other folks to get that data in place. When we do, we'll be updating this viewer as well. And then moving on down to land use, of course, that's a lot of the things that you guys will all see is, planning cases at the master plan land use level. In addition, you can see here, we look at project regional significance, regional plan amendments. Those are all different conformance review cases that will be coming to this body for potential approval. And so you can see we have all sorts of different stats for land use broken down, by single family, attached, detached units, commercial, industrial, and then we have kind of an other category that takes into account open space and things like that. So you can see all of this good kind of regional information that we're tracking here at Team RPA on this dashboard. And then also I should mention that employment is another thing that we're looking at. These numbers for the consensus forecast are 2022. Again, we will be updating with 2024 when the consensus forecast, if it gets approved in September. So this will then show 2024 to 2044 job totals, and it will be a slightly potentially revised growth rate there. This data below it here comes from Dieter and also some from Team RPA, and it kind of just breaks down employment in Washoe County by industry type. And you can see that there's been a few changes, from previous years. For example, in 2023, we've added a few more jobs in like retail and trade, but it looks like in manufacturing, there was a little bit less in 2023 than 22, for example. And then we have this graph here that's showing those same kind of category industry breakdowns, and it kind of shows the difference in percent share of employment by those categories since 2019. And then moving down here, as I mentioned, these are all the actual annual report summaries that we get from the local governments, and you can see, maybe a little bit hard to see on the screen, but you can see all the affected entities and folks that we work with, and we definitely appreciate all their efforts and all of them working on these reports and how they interface with our regional plan. So yeah, just kind of highlights all the work that everyone has been doing in the region and highlights our dashboard that you guys can all access. I should mention it's teamrpa.org/TMAR. So there you have it. If you have any questions, happy to answer them now or at a later date.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really impressive, and it's such a great resource, too. So great work by the team here. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, this is Rob for the record. Does that show how many affordable home projects are approved and have been started or are in the works? Or do you have that information?
I don't know that information off the top of my head, but we do have that somewhat encapsulated in our affordable housing tracker, but I'm also not entirely sure if that captures the totality of affordable housing projects. And Jeremy also maybe to answer that as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Sure, Jeremy Smith, the record. Rob, that's a great question. The tracker has the information about existing affordable housing projects in the region, how many units are there available at that affordable rate. But the other, it's a little behind because there's been some turnover at the State Housing Division, so we're waiting to get an update. It's about a year out, so as soon as that's updated, we'll bring that to bear on the dashboard. In terms of future projects, typically, we address that through the home consortium process that comes before the Regional Planning Governing Board for ratification. So there's a multi-jurisdictional coalition of home, this consortium, that makes decisions about how funding will be allocated to affordable housing projects, and that does come forward to the governing board. And if you want more information about that, we'd be happy to share that. But that should track most of the newly proposed affordable housing projects.
Okay, yeah, I was kind of interested in what's already been approved, has it been started or not, and things along that line.
Makes sense. I think
Okay.
we'll take a look at that information and see if we've got that. Certainly, we have the date when it's approved, but we can check to see if we can understand if they've started and get that info for you, Rob.
I'll reach out to you offline about that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner
CIP
Krim.
data that you had been looking to get from all the entities, was that relatively seamless in gathering that more updated information? Because we had talked about that throughout the year. You had told us
Yes.
about gathering that information and being able to hopefully get more information from the entities, and were you able to gather a more robust set of information on CIP from the entities this year?
Yes, Jeremy Smith, the record again. Great question. Absolutely, we were, as part of our public infrastructure plan project, which we are trying to put the finishing touches on and get a draft of that available for everyone to view. We'll actually be propping up a public infrastructure plan specific dashboard that will talk about all of that information and the sort of regional synthesis. We're really close, and in fact, our next presentation is going to highlight where we're at in terms of that. So we're about a week out from being able to share it with everyone here.
Yes, and I also forgot to mention, in part of our annual report ask, that's another ask that we've been doing now is the capital improvement project. So we kind of put that ask there out at the same time. Yeah, so for each year, we'll be doing, of course, this regional annual reports and then also the capital improvement projects as well. That will feed into the PIP that you'll hear about in just a second. You're welcome.
There you go. Any other questions? Do we need to take any action on this?
I move to accept,
Okay,
to approve the report.
all right. Can we get a motion to approve the report? I'm looking at you, Commissioner.
Okay, I'll make the motion. Commissioner Kramer here. I move to accept the submitted annual reports and the 2023 Truckee Meadows annual report.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Let's move on to item C, Director Smith. Here we go.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So moving on to item 7C, once again, Jeremy Smith for the record. You've seen much of this before, but mainly for a reminder, and also as to the benefit of the new members, we wanted to just run through quickly a quick update of what we're trying to do in terms of this 2024 regional plan update, where we are in the process, and what you can expect in the next few weeks in terms of products and how we're going to get to the finish line for the 2024 regional plan update. So next slide, please. All right, so especially for folks that are new, we did a major overhaul in 2019. That was, we had a plan that had been approved in 2006 timeframe, and it had lasted till about 2019, actually, and then it had been the result of legal settlements, sort of some legal action, and it had sort of moved away from the basis in state law of what it says that the contents of the regional plan ought to be. I mean, it was all kind of still in there, but maybe not as direct as it could have been. So we really tried to lean back into what state law said we needed to address. And we did as much as we possibly could to hit that milestone of getting a new plan adopted in 2019. But we realized that we could certainly do a better job in meeting those requirements in two main areas, and those were natural resource planning and also public infrastructure planning. And so as part of that 2019 update, we created policies that tasked the staff in this commission to move forward with creating a natural resources plan and a public infrastructure plan that specifically addressed those comments and those topic areas, rather. And so this is a very simple slide that I've been making that Shani, who's not here, who's on vacation, would be very upset that I'm showing you because she hasn't been able to make it look beautiful. But the point is that we've got a regional plan, and that is really sitting at the top. That is our policy document. And you just saw with item 7A, Chris went through and hit all of those policy sections. That is where all the actual policy work and rules live. However, those policies need to be based on something, and they need to be based on accurate and comprehensive information. And so our path forward with this is to create these projects, these initiatives and plans that underpin the policies that are in the regional plan. And so we've been working diligently on those first two, the green one and the red one, Natural Resources Plan and the Public Infrastructure Plan. Those are just about ready to bring for adoption with the 2024 plan through our September and October public hearing process. And we'll show you where you can get access to view the current drafts of that information. And then I've got that blue, we'll just talk about the blue one really quick. That's sort of post-update, post-October. We really want to be more transparent, and for not that we're trying to hide anything, but just it's a lot of work to get all of this stuff out there, but really create a document that talks about housing, to Commissioner Pierce's questions, that talks about our ability to model and forecast future populations, and get all of that into a third foundational effort that will underpin the policies in the regional plan. But right now, we're focused on the green and the red, and we're just about there with that. If we go to the next slide, please, my giant arrow, which leads over to the other stuff that Chris mentioned. The work that we do, our casework, is really focused around changes to the local jurisdiction master plans. So we want to make sure those are in conformance with our agreed-upon regional vision in the regional plan. Also, that goes for facilities plans like the regional transportation plan or the school district's facilities plan, making sure that stuff is in alignment as well. So any changes that are proposed for either of those plans, as we saw, need to come here to this body for a conformance review with the regional plan. Also, we have the state law defined and further refined and defined resolution for projects of regional significance. In the back of the regional plan, I believe it's Appendix 2, you can find the current resolution that describes what qualifies a project as a project of regional significance. And if it does hit any of those thresholds or requirements, then we will bring it forward for a conformance review against the regional plan as well. And really that's in recognition of the fact that very large projects may be completely contained in a given jurisdiction, but because of their size, the impacts are far-reaching and they cross jurisdictional boundaries. We want to make sure that everyone has a chance to get a look at those. And then finally, we have our regional plan amendments, where we actually take that to this board and then up to the Regional Planning Governing Board, and really that's how we control changes to the regional plan. But all of that, all of those things on the right in that white box, they all flow from the policies that are in the regional plan, and those policies, as we'll see as Nate goes into our natural resource section, really they're underpinned by foundational understanding and information and data about the topics that we're trying to create policies about. So with that, next slide, please. I think we'll pass it over to Nate Kusha, who will talk to us about the natural resources planning effort and where we're at.
Good evening, Commissioners. Nate Kusha for the record. As Jeremy mentioned, we'll go ahead and walk through where we're at with the natural resources plan and getting that ready to go along with the adoption of the regional plan in October. So just to give a quick background for any of you who are new, as I know there's a few of you, and reminder for the rest of you, as Jeremy mentioned, this came out of the old regional plan, and updating that when we decided that we needed more of an understanding of our natural resources in our area, and we kind of came up with a two-pronged approach on how to do that, and that was find data and information about it, and to synthesize that data and information into written narratives for a document for the public, for our own use, to give an understanding kind of at a regional level and a high sort of view of things about our natural resources in the area. So with that, we gathered tons of data. We had a consultant help us, and we created our natural resources data portal, which is up and running. So if you want information on natural resources in the area, you can go ahead and go to our natural resource data portal, search anything you want to know about natural resource related, and we will most likely have some data about it. As you can see here, we searched water, and we got 92 results there. So go check that out if you haven't. Along with that, though, we have our narrative portion. So we have been drafting the written portion of this for quite some time now. We put a version 1 out for review. We got some comments from some of the commissioners here, as well as some other field experts in natural resources. We revised things, added some missing items that we didn't have quite in there. We now have version 2 out for review. And that is at the website there. You can see it's our regional plan update website, that teamrpa.org/2024-RPU. You can go there, find this document, as well as the others. We'll touch on that later, but if you want to go check out the latest and greatest version of the Natural Resources Plan, you can go there and you can email us or call us, whatever you want to do. Give us any comments you have about that. So here you can see kind of our table of contents for that document, just kind of outlining the various items in here. We have our 6 natural resource categories with underlying topics in each of those, some introduction, conclusionary material, and that conclusion really comes to our policy implications, which we will talk about now. So we, through this process, have identified really 4 natural resource policy additions that we are hopeful to move into our regional plan for the 2024 update in October. Many of you are probably familiar with these, but just a real quick rundown. It's our source water protection policy, a regional trails policy, a tribal coordination policy, and what we're calling the natural resource consideration areas. So first off, we have that source water protection policy. We have done a lot of work for years now working on this 2020 Integrated Source Water Watershed Protection Plan. It's a whole name, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we've been working with RCI, WRWC, and others, and we've done a lot of data and background work helping with that. So a lot of information and background work has gone into this, and we really want to just recognize that plan in the regional plan, and also for cases that come to regional planning, we're really requesting comment from the appropriate entities when something falls into one of the critical source water protection areas, which are identified in that plan. And that plan is available at WashingtonCountyCleanWater.org if you want to check it out. Similarly, our regional trails policy, same thing with the source water. We've been working for a number of years now with Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation and the folks over there on the Truckee Meadows Trail Plan and Report. We've done a lot of provided a lot of the mapping data, et cetera, for that. And so we want to recognize that plan, all the great work that's happened there as well. And then same thing, request comment from the appropriate entities when something is close to, with maybe in a buffer, something, or will interact with an identified trail or maybe a proposed or planned trail as well. And that plan is available at the tmparksfoundation.org, so Truckee Meadows Parks Foundation, and you can check that plan out as well. Moving into our tribal coordination policy, we really want to acknowledge the different perspective that the tribes have in regards to planning, things like planning for 7 generations, et cetera. And we are really striving to have regular meetings with tribal planners as well as other tribal stakeholders. We're shooting for kind of quarterly meetings with those tribal entities. We met with RSIC and they seemed good with that. We are in talks with the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe as well. And also, we do our initial review memos for every case that comes through regional planning, right? And we are putting up a website where all of those will be hosted, so anybody in the public or anybody has access to see any of the initial review memos we've done. So we are putting that up for anybody to look at the information, and we especially want to keep the tribes involved when it's especially relevant to them. So we're giving them, everybody access to that, but they have access to that, and we're also setting some sort of parameters internally where we'll say, hey, we think that this case is really going to affect the tribe, or we want to seek comment from them, and we will reach out to them specifically on those cases and route them those initial review memos and ask for comments as well, so we can provide in those memos. So that's how we're kind of stylizing this policy. We don't have quite policy language identified for that yet, but we're working on it and we're in discussion with the tribes for that. Finally, we have our natural resource considerations area. So this is kind of a meaty one. The NRS statutes for what should be included in the regional plan requires us to have a map that shows areas best suited for development. So we are kind of taking the flip side of that. We have our DCA area, which is a hard constraint. Essentially, you can't build here, or very difficult to build. There are certain considerations. We are doing kind of sort of a softer constraints with this natural resource consideration areas, and those two maps together will serve as that map to show where areas are best suited for development by showing where they're not. So this is going to consist of, this policy is going to consist of policy language about what that means and data specifically, as well as a map and tool. So, and anybody will have access to the tool or the map, so anybody can check it out. We'll especially be providing it to local planners, and we will use it internally for any case that comes through regional. So what does that look like? Here is the current data layers that we have targeted for inclusion in the natural resources consideration areas map. And it's things you can see there. The slopes 15 to 30, we have 30 and greater, or greater than 30 in our development constraints areas. However, there's still considerations with lower degree slopes. Things like wildfire risk, habitat, endangered species, et cetera. So this is kind of what that looks like. So when we receive a case in regional planning, we can go ahead and put in a parcel number or a group of parcel numbers and pop it up on our natural resource considerations areas viewer, which will look like this. So this just has a few of those data layers that is just kind of just a mock-up, not the official data layers that'll be used. But you can see on the left here, we have two things in that parcel we've identified, and that is the endangered and threatened species, as well as some fire history. So that kind of gets at that fire risk there. And on the right, we have a critical source water protection area it interacts with, as well as a previous fire, some fire history. So this is kind of what the map will look like. And then we'll have a tool that we run through it that has a readout, looks something like this. Again, this is a mock-up, very draft, but we're working on the mapping tool currently. So on that left, it kind of shows the APN, and then each of those featured class names, those first sort of ones in the groupings, are the layer that it's interacting with. So that first one is the critical source water protection area. As you can see on our first example on the left, there's a 0% cover. So that's saying it's not interacting with the critical source water protection area. Don't have to worry about that. However, there's a 13% cover of a previous fire, as well as a 17% cover of an endangered or threatened species. And you can see there it provides some other information about more specific to each of those layers. On the right, same thing. Now we have 43% coverage of that parcel that is a critical source water protection area. Something like that, we're going to say, hey, let's reach out to the WRWC or TUMWA, whoever the relevant entity is, and get more information about what that means, what considerations we should be looking at, things like that. So again, this is a draft, but we're working on creating a tool like this, and each of these readouts will be provided in our initial review memos to the jurisdictions before any case goes through the jurisdictional planning process. So all of you should hopefully, after October, start seeing something like this in your packets at your local jurisdictions that we have included for information for you guys to look at way ahead of time. So, with that, that's where we're at with the Natural Resources Plan. Again, we're in draft 2. We're just inches away on the Natural Resources Plan. If you want to give comments or input, go to that website, provide your comments, send us an email, whatever it is. And that's all. I'm going to pass it to Chris to talk about the PIP.
Before you pass it on.
Yes.
Take a break and see if any of the commissioners have any questions on the Natural Resource Plan. All right, you're good to go, Chris.
Lovely.
Thanks.
Good evening again. Chris Tolley, Team RPA. I will walk us through, hopefully fairly quickly, the Public Infrastructure Plan. And for the new commissioners, we'll go hit some highlights too. So this document, the Public Infrastructure Plan, as Jeremy laid out in the introductory portion of this, was a requirement, or it was a work program item that was produced from the 2019 Regional Plan Update to help us organize and summarize our understanding of public facilities in a greater way, or build on the work that was done as part of the update process. And as I prefaced in the item that we heard 2 items ago, that this is grounded in state law. And we'll look at the code, and I might even read all of it now. Joking. But this is helping us to coordinate regionally with folks like the City of Reno and City of Sparks. Thank you to both. And to make greater, better informed decisions when it comes to looking at land use and the interaction with that in public facilities and services. So the statute, contents of the general plan, contents of the regional plan, and this is from 2780274. We'll leave it right there, but there are 2 sections that do address public facilities and services. And those, as I introduce again in the item, are related to water, wastewater, stormwater, flood control, transportation, and roads, and schools. And these are the 5, what we call the 5 service domains that we look at for, as part of this process, part of the Public Infrastructure Plan process, but also our regulatory function, the Regional Plan Amendment, and the Conformance Review portion too. And other items such as the consensus forecast, spatial modeling, which we'll talk about in here. So we came up with 3 goals. And those goals, pretty simply, to create the document, to bring all the information together, and to design and implement improvements, policy improvements and process improvements to the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. And we are working with pretty much everybody that we can for this process, but you can imagine the jurisdictions with the sheer breadth of what they do takes up a large percentage of that, but we also work heavily with the likes of TUMWA, SVGID, and the airports as well. Not to forget anybody on this list, but. So to start with goal 1, and that was to create the actual document. So we are, again, this is focused on the 5 domains, but we are really close to actually producing the written portion of this. And we have long held the idea that since this is really pulling the financial and the data portion from the plans from these entities and the jurisdictions that we're working with, that the actual written portion is going to be pretty light. It's going to present the regional perspective, and then what we're really doing is synthesizing taking the data and turning it into usable information from that regional perspective. So we have more than the outlines created. We actually have the document more or less drafted, going through an internal review at TMRPA, and we hope to present or get that out as soon as possible. Goal 2, and we brought this up a little earlier, but this is really bringing all the data together. And this has been a lot of work, but also a lot of important work, and I think has helped us to really understand what the path forward is going to be in terms of pulling in the correct data, and that was with the help of our consultant on this, Hansford Economic Consulting, helped us to really understand how to get at what we want to show from a regional perspective. And that is looking at the CIPs plus the asset list the jurisdictions and the entities produce as part of their ongoing process, getting that information and using that to turn into a regional summary of those, as well as pulling in the data, the geographical information system data, the pipes, the lines, the roads, all that stuff into a viewer, which you can see in the lower right-hand corner. But bringing all the data in so that we at regional planning and the staff of the jurisdictions and the entities would have access to look at this holistic view of data instead of your data being focused on your jurisdictional boundaries or your entity's interest. And this gets us to the actual breakdown of the information that we have. I think this might be the first time that something's actually gone out. But this is breaking down the CIP data, and we're looking, as we've said, looking really at two different realms. That is growth. That is things related to capacity improvements, new development that is being constructed, and that could be constructed by an entity, or it could be constructed by a developer. And we're trying to break that down, and we can get there understanding that by pulling in the data from the asset list and teasing out what the developer's share is. And then you can see this is a representation of the actual asset list. So this is looking at things that were constructed over a particular time frame of fiscal year 22-23. And then we're looking at this share of development, not share, all development. And I think it was 315 million.
Yeah, I mean, can I jump in here, maybe, Chairman Smith, the record?
Yeah.
I made this slide, and so really this is a little teaser, because we don't want to put too much of this information out there before we have given the jurisdictions and entities a final chance to give us the thumbs up, but I couldn't resist. This is the cumulative spending on capital assets in those 5 domains from those entities that were listed for the fiscal year 22-23 as reported in the annual comprehensive financial reports of those entities. And so we've been working with all of the entities and jurisdictions, getting that information. And so our dashboard that we produce will actually break this out by those domains and by more information. But this, if you're looking backward at what was spent in the fiscal year 22-23, it was roughly $315 million in those domains. And what we're seeing here is that gray portion is about 57%. 50% of those dollars was spent to go back into the community for community investment, rehabilitation, maintenance, building sustainability. And then the remainder, the red portion, was built to accommodate growth. And what's really neat about this is that given these assets need to be dedicated by the developers, we can get a feel for how much of that growth capacity has been funded initially by the developers as part of their project and then dedicated over. And that's that small 12% piece of the pie, and then the 31% would be actually publicly funded. So this is going to change every year, and this is the retrospective look, which we will be gathering every year as part of that annual report ask. But we're further also grabbing the forward-looking 5-year CIPs and doing the same kind of breakdown by these domains. And so we will understand not only what had been spent in the previous fiscal year, but what we're planning to spend and what the shares will be. Now, in the future, we can't indicate the developer share because it hasn't been dedicated, so it will just be a straight growth versus community investment, but every year in the asset list retrospective, we'll be able to hopefully pull out that development share. So you can look forward to seeing more granular information, but this is the sort of high level, what do we spend over that year, and we'll go from there.
And then the next cycle, so we're looking at fiscal year 22-23, and the next cycle, we would obviously look at 23-24, but when I think it envisioned this process kicking off that we would be looking at the most recent data, like 23-24, but all that data, looking at the asset list, developer contribution, doesn't really come out until the latter portion of the cycle. So this is really, it worked out in our favor to utilize this particular time frame based off of where we are today, if that makes hopefully sense. But so you can look forward to an update of this 23-24 next cycle and moving forward like that on an annual basis.
Can I ask a question really quick? Is the fiscal year July to June?
Yes.
Is that what you're,
Yep.
okay, I just wanted to.
There's a slight difference. I think the federal fiscal year is a little different. I couldn't tell you what it is off the top of my head, but that has impacts.
Yeah, it's hooked.
Yeah, that has impacts, I think, for some road projects and then the airports. But we'll try to represent that as accurately as possible, working through them. So then the spatial modeling, which talked about, so the data that we're pulling in, the actual pipe, the line data, that goes into this lookup, which is part of the 2019, not lookup, but representation, 2019 regional plan update process, where we pulled data from 2013 to 2017 timeframe, roughly. And really so this annual ask for data is going to allow us to update this map and to have an accurate, relatively recent, within the last year, refresh of this data and keep that moving forward so that we can know infrastructure proximity as it changes over time and represent that for, could be capacity, so spatio-temporal, I think that's right, comparison of variables. So looking at the different domains across the region and having an accurate representation of that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to this.
Jeremy, for the record, I would just add that we've created this 40-acre hexagon grid, if you will, to portray these data because these infrastructure data are sensitive. We have some data sharing agreements. We are not, it's not really our data. So if you, for example, wanted to know the actual location of, say, water mains, and you asked us, we would direct you to TUMWA to work out that data sharing agreement with them. And we have committed to only show these data publicly at that 40-acre level. So I think it works for the regional kind of work that we do, and again, that overall understanding of where we have good, existing adequate service, where we're planning to serve. But part of this project is also understanding the roadmap of who to go to get what. And so we're putting that together at that high level, and then if people want more information, they can continue to dig, and we can help direct them.
Moving on to goal 3, design and implement improvements to the 2019 regional plan. So this, I think when we started the process, we thought this might include policy, but really it's the process. And we've been talking about this process throughout this entire portion of the presentation, but it is getting the data and making sure that the jurisdictions and entities are on board with that process, as well as getting the financial portion of that, the CIP and the asset list. So memorializing that process as a replacement to policy PF3 in the regional plan. And then also looking, although we may not come up with a long list, but short and long-term policy implications for the next chunk of 5 years for the next regional plan update process. And then this is really getting us to better implement all this information, this data regarding pipes and lines and fiscal portions are really getting to a better implementation of policy PF1, the standards for the Truckee Meadow service area as well as rural area and the different domains to better understand available and adequate, plan for within a 10-year time frame, and then those things would be required to be constructed by a developer, just speaking generally. And that is, again, regarding the 5 service domains. FIP schedule. So I think this is my last slide. So the full document we anticipate will be ready soon. Yes. Don't know if that's going to be July, but close. We're maybe like an inch away, whereas I think the NR plan's like that close. We're like an inch. Close. No new policies proposed for inclusion, just update to policy PF3. And that, I believe, concludes my part. Thank you.
Great. Wow. Wonderful. Does any of the commissioners have any questions for staff?
Just a comment. I mean, this is a very ambitious undertaking to grab a hold of what we have undeveloped and what we have in the pipeline, and that really sort of brings to life the numbers that you start getting, whereas they're just in the past, and at least my experience is, I was just throwing a dart on the board and seeing where it lands. But this is really exciting.
Definitely.
So.
Any other comments, questions?
I'm just going to finish it out. A couple more
Okay,
slides.
go ahead.
Here I go.
Finish it
Yeah,
out.
Jeremy's doing it for the record one more time. Just a few more slides. And thanks, Chris and Nate, for taking us through that. I know we've seen a lot of that before, but we're really excited because we're establishing these 2 processes and efforts with this adoption, and they will become the vehicle through which we can continue to enhance our understanding of natural resources and address natural resource topics. The PIP will become the vehicle through which we continue to understand and enhance our understanding of public infrastructure and link it to growth. So we've really, it's again, those pillars, the foundational things that lead to that regional plan. And then, after we get through October, we'll be coming with the nerdy technical stuff too. So we'll get that population and housing aspect. Right now, you can go to tmrp.org/2024-RPU to get access to the current drafts. And what we've got there is on the left, the green kind of area, that's that version 2 of the natural resources plan. It is really close, but we would really appreciate any comments that you want to do. We'll wrap that up into a version 3 before the end of next month. In the middle is the regional plan itself. That's the 2024 redlined version. So what we've gone in there and basically created red text and drawn a line through it for anything we're proposing to remove, and then added in blue, underline anything we're proposing to now include. And that includes those policies that Nate mentioned and any little tweaks. There's a few little tweaks to policies, and we went over that last month. And if you're really interested to see the whole realm of all of those changes proposed, that is in the June record online. So you can do that or give us a buzz and we'll make sure you get connected to that. And then at the far right is the public infrastructure plan. If you click that now, nothing happens. But very, very soon that will be available. So we'll alert you as soon as that is there. And next slide, please. Excellent. Okay. So now just to kind of take us through, how do we get to October 10th, which would be the Regional Planning Governing Board meeting? That would be the final adoption moment if all goes as planned. So we already had last month's meeting, June 27th, where we reviewed those policies, as I just mentioned. Here we are today on July 25th, talking about a version of the NR plan and just kind of updating you to where we're at. We're going to keep working, and then we're going to do a very similar update, hopefully, obviously, a little further along, for the Regional Planning Governing Board on August 8th. That'll be the next meeting of that board, and moving on. And then we have August 17th, which is a Saturday, where we're going to have a big event at Rancho San Rafael. It's our 3rd annual One Region event, where we bring folks together to talk about the regional plan, what we're proposing. We're going to have tons of info, obviously, since I'm doing all this work, and we're going to have a bluegrass band. There's going to be some trivia and prizes, a raffle, some food. And it should be a really fun time. So if you get a chance on that Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., we'll be hanging out in the Peavine Pavilion, I believe it is, at Rancho San Rafael. And if you need more info, just let us know. And you might even hear that advertised on NPR, because we upped the game this year and did some advertising, just because we're doing this regional plan update, and we want to make sure that folks are aware and they can tell us their thoughts. Then we have the August 22nd RPC meeting, which will be here in this chambers. That is where we will have all of the versions that we want to propose to bring to the public hearing process in September as finalized as they can possibly be, to bring to you and give you a chance weeks before that to have a chance to review them. And I'm specifically talking about that public infrastructure plan, but right now you could go start reviewing the other ones. And just kind of make sure everything's baked, and that the folks on this, you guys are the technical advisory committee for this regional planning. So to make sure everyone is on board and you accept the work as it is, because we're really bundling the natural resource plan and the public infrastructure plan, those efforts and documents, into the regional plan adoption. So that will be kind of not the last chance, but sort of where we want to make sure everything looks good, the beds are made. Moving on, then we will start in September with the public hearing process. So per state law, we're required to bring these items for the regional plan update, the 5-year update, to a public hearing that is physically located in each of one of the jurisdictions. So our first one will be at the Sun Valley Neighborhood Center on September 12th. The second will be then at the City of Reno Council Chambers on September 19th, and then we'll be at the City of Sparks Council Chambers for a full RPC meeting in September, but we'll also do the final review and public hearing on the plan. And that will be the opportunity for this body to vote, if it's ready and you feel good about it, to vote to recommend adoption to the Regional Planning Governing Board, which will be the next slide, on October 10th, right here in this room, 5 years to the day from the adoption of the 2019 regional plan. So we're excited to meet that deadline, and hopefully it all goes as planned. I think with that, that's the final slide. And if you guys have any questions for any of us, we're happy to answer them.
Any further questions, or is this your last opportunity? Do we need to have a motion to approve?
You could have a motion to accept. I don't think it's necessary, but if you want to.
Well, it's not necessary, then let's not do it. All right, thank you. Let's move on to reports. Director report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeremy Smith for the record. One more time, really quick. We're just trying to get the word out. I've been doing a couple talks. I went and spoke to a group of international students at UNR. That was really interesting, and told them about these projects we're doing. And I got to hear about how regional planning does or doesn't happen in other parts of the world. Also did a talk this morning, actually, to a group of realtors that I've done for the past couple years, and gave them an update. It was well received. So any chance I get, I'm talking to people. I mentioned the One Region, August 17th. Damien mentioned in his talk that we'll be bringing the consensus forecast, which is that population forecasting role that we play every 2 years. We'll be going through the water planning. And the reason we go to the Water Planning Commission and Western Regional Water Commission is to make sure that the forecasted population can be served by the identified sustainable water resources. And so that's a check we do every 2 years just to get in front of, hey, we're in a desert. We know we have ultimately a limited water supply. There's a lot of buffer between what we're projecting and what that identified sustainable water resource is, but we're ensuring that every 2 years we do that check. So that's that process. And we'll bring that back to you in September. And then finally, the next meeting, as I mentioned, will be in this chamber on August 22nd at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Great. Do we have any member reports? Okay, how about legal counsel report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Jessica Prenti for the record. I apologize I wasn't able to join you on video today. I'm in a location where our internet's a little bit spotty, but I have nothing to report. I would just like to welcome the new members to the commission, and I look forward to meeting you in person at our next meeting.
Great, thank you. Any requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to our last public comment. Do we have any public comment?
We have none for this item.
All right, let's close public comment. Any written correspondence?
Nothing except for the piece that we shared with you already. That was the public comment on the item, but no additional written correspondence.
We'll see nothing, then I adjourn this meeting.
Rob Shelley.